The Unrelating podcasts are meant to be for education and entertainment. They don't constitute a service or advice. For personal struggles, please reach out to a medical or mental health professional.
Well, it's January 1st, 2025, Michelle, and that can only mean one thing. Time for our New Year's resolutions. Or
is it?
Exactly, or is it? When I look back at 2024, what resolutions that I made and then may or may not have kept, I recall saying I was going to meditate more, and because I read this book by Dan Harris. So I thought, okay, I'm going to meditate more. And you can actually there's really quick ways of doing it. Was I successful this past year? I would say more or less, yes. Consistent, no. What about you? Anything in 2024 that you may or may not have set and succeeded or failed?
Yes. Yes to the latter. I specifically remember making a resolution last at the beginning of 2024 too, and this is embarrassing for our international listeners to hear this, but my resolution was to learn the metric system. And I feel very ignorant that I am still on the imperial system only, and I don't do very well with the other measurements. So I really wanted to bear down and become more familiar with those, and I did not.
That's a really ambitious goal, and I've never heard somebody say that before.
It feels important for some reason to me to not be ignorant on that scale, but I didn't do it. I think I got as far as kind of just researching the difference and the history of the metric system and the different conversion charts, and then I got overwhelmed and never returned to it.
Well, speaking of being overwhelmed and never returning, this episode is actually about non-resolutions for 2025 and how we can approach that. People tend to put a lot of pressure on themselves, and they may or may not succeed. So we're just going to dive into that on this special New Year's episode.
Sounds great. Let's do our music.
Cue the music. Welcome to Unrelating with Kel and Michelle, and I'm one of your hosts, Kelly. With me is my co-host, Michelle, a licensed marriage and family therapist who's been providing individual and couples therapy for over a decade. Together, we'll explore how we engage in relationships, why we do what we do, and what causes people to unrelate. So New Year's resolutions have jump-started big changes for many people, despite the widespread belief that they don't work. Studies show that 55% of resolvers had maintained their resolutions at a 1-year follow-up, but just 20% of resolvers had kept their resolutions 2 years later. So I think the important takeaway is instead of making a New Year's resolution, we should instead pledge not to change something in our lives. But why? Michelle, what exactly does that mean to you?
To resolve not to change something. I like the framing of that. Well, let's back up. Because this idea of not having a resolution, for some people listening, they're going to be like, yeah, right on. I agree with that. And for other people, it might feel a little like, off-putting. But I feel like we just need to point out how arbitrary the, calendar year is. It's a social construct. And now there's this whole pressure built around January 1st, turning over a new leaf, becoming a new you, all the self-improvement talk. Everywhere you go, articles you read are all about like, what are you going to do differently? And so kind of to get closer to your question, it could be beneficial for yourself and for your relationships to think about something that you want to keep doing well, that you have been doing. And I like kind of the positive reinforcement of that concept. And maybe instead of saying, I'm going to do something better, improve in some way, maybe stop doing a behavior that has caused you some distress in the past year. So That feels a little jumbled, but I feel like we can parse all that out as we speak today in our show.
Yeah, I like what you said about continuing a goal you may have already started in 2024. One of my goals was to improve my Spanish, and I downloaded the app Duolingo about a month ago, and I just been slowly kind of chipping away. It's actually a really easy app to learn Spanish. So my long-term goals, I would love to become very fluent in Spanish, or at least semi-fluent. but I think that's something that I think would benefit me. And and again, it's kind of a mini goal. We can talk about setting mini goals too, but that seems like it's something that I can handle. I get a reminder every day. I'm gonna okay, I'm gonna practice Spanish for 10 minutes today. It sets me up for success, I think.
Yeah. And personally, I believe all goals should be mini goals. You can have like a kind of this aim in mind or this outcome that you want down the road, but when it comes to like tangible goals, baby steps are clearly the way to go. Research shows, anybody who is going to tear off a small chunk of a goal versus trying to accomplish everything is going to get overwhelmed. I'm just thinking kind of more on a macro, like why do we have to make January the time to make all these big changes? I think, like we talked about in our last show, we're coming off a period of stress and holidays and end of the year, which tends to be very busy for a lot of people in their employment. Um, and and we're trying to put all this pressure on ourselves right after that pressure to suddenly like make a big change in our life.
Hmm.
And, there's just a lot of ways we set ourselves up to fail when we do it that way. So the other thing to consider is the idea of just like, I think they already have a dry January. Not going to try and take that term
Hmm.
away, but this moratorium on change would be nice in January, actually, to say I'm not going to do anything radical or try and attain some unachievable goal in January, but maybe throughout the year I will spend more deliberate time reflecting on what I wanted different in my life and how I can get there.
I guess in so many ways, it's like, okay, we're starting a new calendar, a new year.
Hmm.
There's this feeling of newness to it, of rebirth. What can I change this year that maybe I'm not happy with? I don't know. It seems like it's timing wise, July 1st there's probably no date that really stands out that would make sense. But why set dates, right? I mean, um,
Exactly. Yeah, that's my point. It's arbitrary already, so keep it arbitrary. Just and actually, if you are truly committed to whatever this resolution is that you want to achieve, the best way to do so would be to deliberately, like at the beginning of every month, set many goals and check in on yourself and hold yourself accountable. And at the end of every month, review how you did that month. And to me, that is a year-long process. I get the sense from clients I've had that when they make big proclamations in January or at the beginning of the new year, it just sets up this pressure cooker or gives a sense of false hope and very rarely is followed with true action.
I'm thinking back now to resolutions I may or may not have made in the past and how successful those were, or just change. And I think back to like 2020, which was pre-pandemic. I remember getting a call from my dad right before New Year's. He tells me, he's got diagnosed with diabetes. He was really emotional. I could tell it. And I think it really upset him. And then obviously it was really concerning for me because we didn't know what that meant at the time. I looked at how I was living my life, and I decided, I'm gonna try to make some changes this next year. And I think one thing I did was I decided to do like a meatless March of that year, which turned into April, May, June, July, and I
Yeah.
I really haven't eaten meat since then. The occasional, obviously, fish and eggs, but I mean, overall, I'm really happy with the decision, and it really stems from just my health concerns. It was a resolution that I made that I actually kept, shockingly.
Well, I think that's because you found the right motivation. And that's another part of the process of change where you can say, you can take a motivational interviewing perspective if you want and say there's different stages of a person's readiness to change. And then you can say, like, oh, I don't see a problem. I don't need to change. That would be the first stage. Second stage is, okay, I get that this is a problem, but I'm not ready to change. And then the next stage is, okay, I am ready to change. And then so on and so forth. Um, but what you said is really important is you had a reason that really resonated with you and motivated you to make a change. And a lot of times, especially in therapy or in relationships, we talk about something we don't like or something we wish would be different. We want to change this or that. We don't end up with the motivation to do anything about it. We just stay in the talking about it phase for a really long time. And so that's a key point, I guess, in talking about resolutions. If you're determined to have one, make sure that it's a resolution in which you really feel strongly and feel motivated that this change is important to you and would is worth whatever effort you're going to put into it.
Fear is a good
Yes, fear is a
motivator
good motivator.
because
Absolutely.
I was feeling fear for my future. Let me read you some examples of some non-New Year's resolutions and what they could include. We kind of talked about focusing on small, consistent habits. You mentioned that already, Michelle. Learning a new skill at your own pace. I think that's also something that people should take into consideration. Prioritizing self-care, another really, really important one. And that could include anything from just relaxing to recharging to like maybe getting more massages or spending more time in nature. Setting anti-resolutions. Instead of focusing on what you should do, make a list of things you want to avoid, like excessive screen time, which is something that should be my resolution for 2025.
Oh my
Uh,
gosh. Talk
um,
about setting yourself up to fail.
yeah, right.
Not.
And then addressing specific challenges as they arise. Or you may notice a particular area where you want to improve, focusing on making changes in that area immediately without waiting for a new year. So it was just a couple of things that I saw that I thought were really interesting. I want to bring to your attention.
And everything you're saying is just, very reasonable, which I think because of the hype that surrounds New Year's resolutions, it just feels all a little bit false and like you have to say one because you're in a team meeting at work and everyone's like, "What's your New Year's resolution?" There's just so much talk and chit chat around it. But what you're talking about is like the steps anyone should take if they're trying to make a change in their life any time of year. And one thing that stood out for me from what you said is this idea of small steps, in therapy and in a lot of other careers that they talk about SMART goals. And I know you're familiar.
Yep.
SMART goals is an acronym for having a goal that is specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time bound. And the reason those are more effective and are evidence based in certain professions is because they set people up for success. They say, if you are going to have a goal for change, make sure that it is something that you can actually attain, that is specific and not just like, oh, I want to, work out more. What does that mean? That's not going to get you anywhere. And time bound is important too. We forget about that last one because what is the time frame in which you want to achieve this goal? Are you saying, I'm going to learn Spanish, Kelly, in 3 months and be fully fluent? Because that doesn't feel attainable. Or are you
Yeah.
going to say, in 6 months, I will have, learned at least 20 Spanish words? And that might feel a little too easy. So then you adjust accordingly. But just figuring out, being more intentional about if you're going to have a goal, if you're going to try and change, get down to the nitty gritty of it. So not just because it's easier to do it that way, but because then you can celebrate the small wins too. And a lot of learning a new skill or making a change in your life is positive reinforcement. It's seeing, oh, I was actually able to do that thing I said I was going to do. And that builds my confidence, that consolidates my learning in my brain. And that sets me up for even more growth.
We're thinking about going to a Latin American country this upcoming year. So that would be a good time bound commitment. If I can learn a certain number of words or just sentences by the time we go there, that to me would be a win. It'd be a win-win because we're going to be in a foreign country and we're going to be vacationing. But then it's a win on top of that if I can actually sound even remotely, fluent. I should, in
Yeah.
Spanish.
And that brings up the R in SMART, right? Relevant. So you wouldn't want to spend the next 3 months learning kind of the words for, brain surgeon that brain surgeons use in Spanish during surgery, right? That's not
Mhm.
that's not going to help you. So you're going to want to be intentional on the types of Spanish lessons you take, how to get public transportation, what to say at a restaurant, where's the bathroom, where's the library, which we love to say in Spanish. So you're targeting your learning as well.
In your practice, do you see a lot of people coming in with resolutions or non-resolutions? And if you do, what does that sound like? What kind of are they really, really achievable, or are these oftentimes just kind of mini goals?
There does tend to be an uptick in sessions and people seeking out therapy support after the holidays. I think that's more so just to kind of debrief, the concept of, hey, I'm trying to get my affairs in order for this coming year, or my mental health kind of on the right track. I don't run into a lot of people who make resolutions. I think there is kind of a backlash to them at this point. But I would say most of therapy is people coming in wanting some kind of change. Yeah.
Mhm.
And being at varying levels of readiness for that change, but still people coming in acknowledging either something isn't working in their life, or there's something that they don't have that they want, or, some relationship isn't going well and they want something to be different.
And they've been working on this probably already in 2024. So there's just a continuation of that progress too, I'm guessing.
Yeah. Although, I've heard that personal trainers and gyms, like their membership all upticks in January. So this idea of like making a new goal for yourself is still alive out there. I think most people are trying just throughout the year to tackle what's going on for them. And I'm just advocating for people not to double down on the pressure of that just because it's January.
So some key points about non-New Year's resolutions. And we can talk about these kind of as a wrap up, but flexibility, less pressure, and focus on progress, not perfection. So of those three talking points, I think one thing we can both agree on is focusing on progress and not perfection. I think that's something that really stands out to me, and something that I'm going to approach this year.
Yeah, I mean, imagine I do have some perfectionists in my life, so I know I can see the pressure that adds. But I think if we're going to continue this theme of talking about change and turning over a new leaf and all of that, we talked about celebrating the small wins when you do something towards that goal, focusing on smaller achievements to further support your growth, and not having expectations that are unrealistic.
So I would be remiss if I didn't ask you then, Michelle, what non
Are you about to ask me what my New Year's resolution is?
I
Oh
am.
my
So forget what we just said the past 20 minutes.
Yeah.
What what
See,
what is
oh,
your
society.
what's your non if you had to pick one, what is your non New Year's resolution for 2025?
And when you say the non-New Year's resolution, you mean something I want to stop doing? Is that what the non-New Year's resolution is?
Or something that you want to start, but you're going to pace yourself and you're going to not put so much pressure on yourself about.
You know what my New Year's resolution and non-New Year's resolution are going to be, and they're the same thing. Imagine that, is to not even think about making any changes in my life until mid-February. That's
Meaning,
my commitment to my mental health, I think.
so by doing so, you're not putting pressure on yourself. You're going to take some of that anxiety away.
Yeah. And I think that helps me for this whole month. I don't even have to think about it. So frees up my brain for other things.
I love that. So that means I can do the same. I can sort of pace myself with my resolutions this year. I'm not going to come out of the gate hot with something on January 2nd.
I have one caveat to that because obviously we're unrelating with Kel and Michelle. So I want to bring this back to relationships. Throughout the year, it is important to reflect on the relationships in your lives. And so I wouldn't necessarily advocate for taking a full break in January from that, just because, those are the most important pieces of our wellness, our relationships. But when it comes to resolutions and change, I do think that it's important to reflect throughout the year on how to make your relationships better, how to show up better in your relationships, and how to try to make adjustments to the ones that aren't working for you.
Connecting or reconnecting in many ways, it seems like also is really key for 2025. The past couple of years have been a bit challenging for relationships and for friendships, maybe more so, or family relationships. So maybe now's the time to say, okay, let's look ahead and put egos aside.
But even the reconnecting part, like I love my friends more than I can even express. And yet I take forever to answer texts. Even though I love them, I miss them, I want to talk to them every single day. Like I still, that's a deficit of mine. So that really resonated with me when you talked about reconnecting or recommitting to connecting. That's a big one for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was going to talk to you about that actually, about your texting. Just kidding.
Oddly, you I respond to. So does that mean we're not friends? No, I'm kidding.
I think you're forgiven.
What do you want 2025 to be for you?
Oh,
If you could sum it up.
well, I'm really into self-improvement, and I'm a very curious person anyway. So for me, it's what can I do to improve, and what can I do to that's a very broad question. So it could be, how do I improve relationships? How do I improve?
You know, it's weird though. I can answer for you, knowing who you are. Is like you are someone who just really wants to participate in life and learn about it and connect. So to continue that striving for just, being part of the world.
Yeah. You know what I'm going to do in 2025?
That's your answer though. I'm an introvert, so I'm the opposite. I have, what is it? It's not FOMO, it's JOMO, joy of missing out. That's me.
Yes. You should patent that. I'm going to volunteer more in 2025. I keep saying I'm going to, and I've done a little bit, but I'm not. It's just something I really want to do. I don't know what that
I
looks
love that.
like. Yeah, I just want to. I want to do more of that.
We should talk outside of here because I have a lot of opportunities for you. That was a huge part of my life growing up, a huge part of my life now. I'm waiting for the girls to be a little older so they can qualify to volunteer at different places. But oh man, there's so many opportunities.
Yeah, I have a soft spot for pets, and I have a soft spot for veterans, and I really want to work with both or help both somehow. Animals, that's an easy one. But vets, I think, deserve our respect and our appreciation.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So we'll see.
I second that. And for 2025, I'm also excited because we have some great shows lined up. We have some guests joining us coming up soon that I think are going to lead to some great conversations, and hopefully they will resonate with our listeners. And so to be able to continue this with you and just putting out more good vibes and reflections about relationships, that is going to be fulfilling in 2025.
I'm really looking forward to 2025 unrelating episodes. I think this is a really enjoyable podcast. This is something that I think we can really, really grow.
And on that note, anyone who's listening who wants to be a guest, we are always looking for folks to come and talk to us. So please email us at theunrelatingpodcast@gmail.com or reach out to us on our socials, Facebook and Instagram.
And feel free to email us any questions you may have, or even show topics. We'd be more interested in tackling something that may be important to you. So feel free to reach out to us as well. All right. Thanks, Michelle.
Thank you.
And Happy New Year. If you're struggling with family, friends, or coworkers, in a bad relationship and wondering what to do, or you want a relationship and to set yourself up for success, then we want to talk to you. So make your appointment on Unrelating. To be a guest, ask a question, or recommend a topic, drop us an email at theunrelatingpodcast@gmail.com. And be sure to follow us on Instagram or Facebook.